Once upon a time, in a quiet little village by the edge of the world, there lived a boy named Eli. The village was nestled on the shores of a great shimmering lake, and the stars above it sparkled so brightly at night that everyone called it Starveil. In Starveil, people believed the stars were tiny lanterns hung in the sky by invisible hands. Every night, their soft glow lit up the earth, the hills, and even the dreams of those who slept under them. Eli, however, had never seen the stars. Not really. You see, Eli had been born during a long, strange fog that had covered the sky for 7 years. The stars were still there, of course, but always hidden behind a curtain of mist. He'd grown up hearing about how wonderful they were, how they whispered stories to the moon and winked at children who dared stay awake long enough to catch them. But no matter how long he stared into the grey night, he never saw even one. More than anything, Eli wished to see the stars. One crisp autumn morning, Eli visited old Seema, the village lamp maker. Her shop smelled of beeswax and cedar, and shelves lined the walls, stacked with lanterns in every size and shape. Glass globes, metal cages, tiny orbs no bigger than an acorn. "Good morning, Eli," Seema said, peering over her spectacles. "What brings you here?" Eli scuffed his boots against the floor. I want to borrow a lantern, one big enough to light up the stars so I can finally see them." Seema chuckled softly. "My lanterns can't light up the stars, child, but..." She rummaged through a drawer and pulled out a small, curious lantern. It was round and silver, with carvings of moons and suns all over it. "This," she said, handing it to him, "is the starry lantern. When you light it and follow its glow, it will lead you to what you most wish to see." Eli's eyes went wide. "Does it really work?" "That depends," Seema said with a little smile, "on how much you believe." That night, as the village drifted into slumber, Eli lit the lantern. A soft golden light spilled out, and to his surprise, it stretched out into a thin, glowing thread, winding its way through the streets and toward the hills. Clutching the lantern tightly, Eli followed the thread. He passed the bakery, where the scent of fresh bread lingered in the air. He passed the quiet mill by the lake, its great wheel still. And soon, he was climbing the grassy hills, the lantern's glow lighting his path. When he reached the top, the thread stopped, floating upward into the sky. Eli frowned. "How can I follow you if you're up there?" But just then, he noticed something. A tiny star had peeked through the fog, glimmering faintly. Then another, and another. He gasped. They weren't very bright at first, but they were there. And as he stood quietly, they seemed to grow stronger. as though they were shy at first, but now glad he had come. Then came a sound, soft at first, like wind chimes. Eli turned and saw a small figure standing nearby. She was about his age, with hair that glowed like moonlight and a gown that shimmered with stars. Who are you?" he whispered. "I'm Luma," she said, smiling. "A keeper of the night. We've been waiting for someone like you." "Me? Why?" "Because," she said gently, "the stars have been hiding, afraid no one on earth cared to see them anymore. But you came. You believed." Eli's cheeks grew warm. "They're so beautiful," he murmured. "They are," Luma agreed, "but they need help. Will you help me wake them fully?" Eli nodded. "How?" Luma pointed to his lantern. "You've already started, but you'll need to visit the 4 corners of the sky and light each one with your lantern's flame." And so their journey began. They traveled east to where the sun rose. A long sandy beach stretched endlessly, and the water was so still it reflected the grey sky perfectly. As they walked, Eli noticed strange tracks in the sand, like tiny stars had been walking before him. At the far end of the beach lay a giant conch shell, shimmering with pearly colors. Luma knelt beside it and whispered, "Here sleeps Orin, the dawn star." Eli crouched down. "Orin?" A faint voice answered from inside the shell. "Who calls me?" "It's me, Eli," he said, holding up the lantern. "We've come to wake you." The shell trembled. "I've been asleep so long, I forgot how to shine." "Let me help," Eli said softly, touching the lantern to the shell. A warm light spread from the shell, and with a gentle pop, Orin emerged, a tiny glowing star who zipped into the sky, painting the horizon with streaks of gold. "Thank you," Orin called as he rose. Next, they journeyed south, where the air was warm and heavy with the scent of jasmine. The trees grew taller here, their branches braided with vines. Bright flowers peeked from the greenery. In a hidden clearing, they found a nest woven from golden leaves. Inside were 3 stars, curled together like sleeping kittens. "Shh," Luma whispered. "They're shy." Eli tiptoed closer and gently shone his lantern. The stars stretched, blinked, and giggled. "Who's there?" one murmured. "I'm Eli," he replied. "We need you to shine again." The stars tumbled over each other, laughing. "If you play with us, we'll shine." And so Eli and Luma played hide and seek among the vines until the stars' laughter grew so bright it lit the jungle canopy. With a final giggle, they zipped into the heavens, leaving a trail of sparkling petals behind. Then they turned west, crossing fields of wheat that glowed silver under the moon. At the edge of the world stood a great cliff, and below it, the ocean roared. Far below, clinging to the rocks, was a star shaped like a starfish. "How do we reach it?" Eli asked. Luma smiled. "Trust your lantern." Eli held out the lantern, and to his amazement, a golden staircase appeared, spiraling down the cliff face. He descended carefully, the waves crashing around him, and touched the lantern to the starfish. It wriggled awake, letting out a bubbly laugh, and leapt into the air, sending a wave of light across the sea. Finally, they journeyed north, where the mountains were crowned with snow and the air was sharp and cold. Icicles sparkled like diamonds, and the sky above was a deep indigo. In a crystal cave, the last sleeping stars huddled together, their glow barely visible. Eli's breath came out in little clouds. His hands trembled, but he held the lantern high. "Wake up," he whispered. The stars stirred, blinking sleepily. "It's time," Eli said, his voice stronger now. "The world needs you." The cave filled with golden light as the stars rose, warming the cold air and melting the frost. When the last star joined the others in the sky, the fog that had covered the heavens for 7 years began to melt away, like ice under spring sunlight. One by one, the stars shone brighter than ever, their light spilling down on the earth below. Luma turned to Eli. "You've done it," she said softly. "You reminded the stars how much they mean to those below." Eli's eyes sparkled as he looked up. "They're even more beautiful than I imagined." Luma smiled. "They've always been here. Sometimes we just need someone brave enough to light the way." On their way back to Starveil, Eli and Luma stopped to rest in a meadow. Fireflies floated around them like tiny lanterns. "Will you stay?" Eli asked. Luma shook her head. "My place is with the stars, but I'll always be watching." She pressed a small charm into his hand, a silver star on a chain. "When the fog returns," she said, "hold this up and remember what you've done." The stars sparkled above Starveil like 1,000 tiny suns, each one awake and joyful, thanks to Eli. But as Eli stood in the meadow, with the lantern still glowing in his hand, he felt a strange quiet settle over him. Luma had disappeared back into the stars with a swirl of moonlight and a promise that she'd always be watching. Yet the air was cooler now, and the golden thread from the lantern began to curl gently downward, tugging at Eli's hand. "Oh," he murmured softly, You're not done yet, are you? He looked up at the sky one last time, smiled to himself, and followed the faint golden thread back toward the hills. The path shimmered softly now, not like the brilliant beams of light that had led him to the four corners of the sky, but something gentler, almost like a lullaby sung into the earth itself. Tiny petals, pink and silver, fell from the sky as he walked, landing on his shoulders and the lantern's handle. They smelled faintly of honey and dreams. The hills sloped into a quiet grove of willow trees. Each tree had its own tiny star nestled in its branches, swaying gently and whispering stories to the leaves. One of the stars winked at Eli as he passed. "Good work," it said in a voice no louder than the wind. "Thank you," Eli replied, barely above a whisper himself. The golden thread wound between the trees and toward a little bridge over a singing stream. The water rippled like liquid moonlight, and when Eli leaned over to look at it, he saw his reflection. But something was different. He looked taller somehow, braver, and his eyes had that quiet spark he'd always admired in the stars. He smiled at himself, then crossed the bridge. On the other side of the grove, the golden thread grew brighter, leading to a small clearing. In the center stood an ancient oak tree, its branches reaching so high they touched the stars themselves. The trunk was wide enough that 5 grown men could not have wrapped their arms around it. And carved into the bark, glowing faintly, was the shape of the very lantern Eli held in his hand. The golden thread wound up the trunk, into the branches, and then vanished into the stars above. Eli tilted his head. "What now?" he asked quietly. The oak tree creaked as though it heard him, and a soft, low voice came from the branches. "Climb," it said. Eli set the lantern on the roots, took a deep breath, and began to climb. The bark was rough but warm under his hands, and soft moss cushioned his bare feet. Higher and higher he climbed, until he felt the air grow cooler and the stars closer. When he reached the top, he found a small hollow in the highest branch, just big enough for him to sit. And when he sat, the lantern floated up from below and settled into his lap. The stars above grew very quiet, and the wind fell still. Eli opened the lantern one last time, and instead of a flame, There was a tiny star inside, no bigger than a pebble, glowing softly and steadily. "You've woken all the others," the little star said to him, its voice gentle and kind. "But now it's time to rest." "Rest?" Eli asked. "You've carried the light for so long," the star murmured. "Even the brightest lantern needs to be set down sometimes." Eli nodded slowly. "But will the stars be okay?" The little star glimmered. "Because of you, they will shine for 1,000 nights more. And when they begin to fade, someone else, maybe another boy or girl, will find the lantern again." The lantern's light dimmed slightly, growing softer, more soothing. Eli felt his eyes grow heavy. When Eli opened his eyes again, he was lying in a field of soft grass and tiny flowers that glowed faintly in the dark. Above him, the stars glittered like diamonds scattered across velvet. Luma was there, sitting nearby. She smiled when she saw him stir. "You did it," she said softly. "Did I?" he asked, rubbing his eyes. She nodded. "Every star in the sky remembers your name tonight." He chuckled quietly. "It's funny. I thought I came all this way just to see them. But now it feels like they came all this way just to see me." "They did," Luma said, leaning closer. "That's the secret about stars. They shine brighter when they know someone's watching." Eli lay back, the grass cool beneath him, the faint hum of starlight all around. Luma reached into her sleeve and pulled out something small and silvery, a key no bigger than a fingernail. "What's that?" he murmured sleepily. "The key to your dreams," she said, placing it gently in his palm. "When you're ready, close your eyes and you'll find the door." Eli closed his fingers around the key and yawned. "Will I see you again?" he asked. Luma's hair shimmered like moonlight. "Every time you look up." Eli felt himself growing lighter, like he was floating. The meadow beneath him faded into a soft glow, and soon he stood before a tall door made entirely of starlight. The key in his hand glowed faintly. He slipped it into the keyhole. The door swung open silently, revealing a cozy little room bathed in golden light. A warm quilt lay on a bed by the window, and outside, the stars winked playfully. Eli climbed into the bed, pulling the quilt up to his chin. The lantern sat on the windowsill, still glowing faintly. One by one, the stars outside leaned closer, peeking through the window to say goodnight. Sleep well, star waker.